What if everything you were taught about your homeland was designed to make you forget who you truly are? Before it was renamed, before borders were drawn across her skin, there existed a land of extraordinary wholeness, a land her own children called Alkebulan, meaning Mother of Mankind or Garden of Eden. Picture vast communities where elders carried wisdom like sacred fire, passing it carefully to each generation. Where children were raised not by one household, but by an entire village breathing together in purpose. Where rivers, mountains, and ancestors were not separate from daily life, but woven into every decision, every celebration, every healing. This was not a primitive existence. This was a civilization operating in deep harmony with nature, with spirit, and with one another. People governed themselves through councils rooted in truth and collective well-being. Love was not just a feeling, it was a system. So what happened to this world? That is exactly what we are here to uncover. Before foreign systems arrived, Alkebulanian societies were not wandering in darkness waiting to be civilized. They were already civilized, deeply and completely. Indigenous governance structures like the Council of Elders operated on principles of consensus, accountability, and communal wisdom. No single voice dominated. Decisions were made collectively, ensuring every member of the community had a stake in the outcome. Belief systems were not superstition. They were sophisticated spiritual frameworks connecting people to the land, to their ancestors, and to each other. These systems carried moral codes, healing traditions, and cosmic understanding that guided behavior without the need for external enforcement. Communities were self-sufficient. Food, medicine, education, and justice all existed within the community itself. These were not primitive arrangements. They were elegant solutions to the complex challenges of human existence, built over thousands of years of lived experience and ancestral knowledge. But then something arrived that would change everything. Christianity came to Alkebulan not simply as a spiritual offering, but as an advance weapon of conquest. Before the physical chains were fastened, the mental chains were carefully constructed. Missionaries moved across the continent with Bibles in hand, telling Alkebulanian people that their ancestors were cursed, that their sacred practices were demonic, and that their connection to the earth and spirit world was evil. The gods they had honored for thousands of years were suddenly reframed as darkness. Their healers became witches. Their ceremonies became sin. This was not accidental. It was strategic. By dismantling the spiritual foundation of a people, you remove their greatest source of strength, identity, and resistance. Christianity was packaged as salvation, but delivered as submission, conditioning Alkebulanian people to obey, to endure suffering quietly, and to place their hope in a heaven far removed from the land beneath their feet. Just as Christianity reshaped the spiritual landscape of Alkebulan, Islam followed a similar path, arriving through trade routes and conquest, gradually dismantling the sacred systems that communities had honored for thousands of years. Beginning in North Africa and spreading southward, Islam brought with it a new language, new laws, and a new identity that many were pressured or forced to adopt. Indigenous names were replaced with Arabic ones. Sacred practices were labeled as ignorance. Ancient spiritual traditions were condemned as worthless. And just like Christianity, Islam was weaponized to justify the Arab slave trade, one of the longest and most devastating forced migrations in human history. Communities that once stood unified were split between those who converted and those who resisted. The arrival of Islam was not simply a spiritual shift. It was a cultural earthquake that fractured the very foundations of Alkebulanian identity, belonging, and ancestral continuity. Both Christianity and Islam did something far more devastating than changing religious practices. They rewired the Alkebulanian mind. Slowly and systematically, people were taught that their ancestors were lost, that their spiritual practices were evil, and that salvation could only come from somewhere else, somewhere foreign, somewhere outside of themselves. Mecca and Rome became the new spiritual centers, replacing sacred mountains, rivers, and ancestral grounds that had guided communities for thousands of years. The psychological damage ran deep. When you convince a people that their elders were wrong, that their land holds no divine significance, and that their traditions are shameful, you sever the very cord connecting them to their identity and purpose. Generations grew up ashamed of who they were. Collective pride dissolved. The internal compass that once pointed toward community, land, and ancestral wisdom was now permanently redirected outward, leaving an entire continent spiritually homeless within its own borders. And then came democracy. Presented as the ultimate gift of civilization, Western democracy arrived in Alkebulan, wrapped in the language of freedom, rights, and progress. But look closer. The same powers that sent missionaries and merchants now sent political architects, drawing borders that split families, clans, and nations in two. These artificial boundaries forced deeply different communities into single states, then handed them ballot boxes and said, "Now govern yourselves." But the rules of the game were never theirs to write. Foreign governments decided which leaders were legitimate. International institutions controlled the money. Elections became approval auditions performed for Western audiences. And when Alkebulanian nations chose leaders who prioritized their own people, sanctions followed swiftly. Democracy was never designed to liberate Alkebulan. It was designed to replace one chain with another, quieter chain. One that looked like freedom from the outside, but functioned as dependency from within. The illusion was masterfully constructed. Now let us talk about democracy, this so-called gift of freedom that has done anything but free Alkebulanian people. Every election cycle, something deeply painful happens across the continent. Neighbors become enemies. Brothers raise weapons against brothers. Sisters curse sisters. Communities that once shared food, land, and laughter are suddenly divided into opposing camps, fighting over positions of power designed by foreign hands. These electoral systems were never built for Alkebulanian societies. They were engineered to exploit existing ethnic differences, turning natural cultural diversity into political ammunition. Politicians learned quickly that the fastest road to power was not unity, but division. Tribe against tribe, region against region, religion against religion. And when the votes are counted, corruption swallows the results whole. The people receive nothing. The cycle repeats. Election after election, decade after decade, the social fabric that once held Alkebulanian communities together is torn further apart, leaving wounds that run generations deep. And then came the classroom. If religion captured the soul and democracy captured governance, education was designed to capture the mind entirely. Colonial education was never built to liberate Alkebulanian children. It was engineered with precision to produce obedient workers, loyal servants, and willing participants in foreign economies. Children were pulled from their villages, stripped of their languages, and forced to memorize the names of European kings, Arab scholars, and foreign heroes, as if their own ancestors had contributed nothing to human civilization. They were taught that intelligence looked European, that progress sounded Arabic, that everything born from Alkebulanian soil was backward, superstitious, and primitive. Generation after generation sat in classrooms that functioned less like places of learning and more like factories of self-hatred. The curriculum was a weapon. Every lesson that erased indigenous knowledge was a calculated act of cultural destruction, replacing ancestral wisdom with borrowed identities that served everyone except the children sitting in those seats. The damage did not stop when the classroom bell rang. It followed Alkebulanian children home, into their dreams, into how they saw their own faces in the mirror. Generations raised under colonial education were systematically taught that their languages were primitive, their ancestors were savages, and their traditions were obstacles to progress. Over time, this teaching became internalized. People began believing it themselves. This is the most dangerous wound, not one inflicted from outside, but one that lives within. Today, many Alkebalanian people compete fiercely for degrees from foreign universities, seeking validation from institutions that were never built to honor them. They distrust neighbors who share their blood, but chase approval from strangers who share their oppression. Communities that once pooled resources together now celebrate individual success while collective infrastructure crumbles. The colonial classroom did not just steal knowledge, it replaced love with shame and unity with silent, devastating self-rejection. Now you can see the full picture. Religion, democracy, and education are not three separate problems. They are one machine with three moving parts, each one reinforcing the other. Religion convinces Alkebalanian people that their salvation lies elsewhere, making them spiritually dependent. Democracy divides them along tribal and political lines, making them politically unstable. Education erases their memory, making them intellectually dependent on foreign systems for answers. Together, these three systems create a person who does not know who they are, cannot agree with their neighbor, and looks to outsiders for guidance. And while Alkebalanian people are busy fighting over elections, debating whose God is real, and chasing foreign degrees, the same foreign powers that built these systems are quietly extracting gold, diamonds, oil, coltan, and land. The continent bleeds wealth daily while its people remain distracted, divided, and disconnected from the very soil beneath their feet. Now that we see the system clearly, what do we do with this knowledge? Awareness without action is just pain. So let this be the moment something shifts inside you. The first step is examination. Question everything you were taught about yourself, your people, and your continent. Ask who benefits from the stories you were given. Ask what was erased to make room for those stories. The second step is reconnection. Your ancestors left behind wisdom, governance models, healing traditions, and spiritual practices that sustained millions for thousands of years. That knowledge is not gone. It lives in the land, in the elders, in the ceremonies, and in your very blood. The third step is rebuilding. Not with anger, but with love. Not in isolation, but collectively. Alkebulan cannot rise through individual success alone. It rises when its people choose each other, protect each other, and build for each other. The reclamation begins now. Alkebulan is not a broken land. It is the cradle of all civilization, the birthplace of humanity, the origin of wisdom itself. The people of this great continent do not need saving by foreign systems. They need remembering. Remember who you were before they told you who to be. Remember the harmony, the communal love, the spiritual depth that existed long before any conqueror set foot on your shores. The path back to unity does not run through foreign capitals, foreign churches, or foreign textbooks. It runs through your own heart, your ancestors, your land. Reject the mental chains that were carefully designed to keep you small. Choose to see yourself through the eyes of your elders, not through the eyes of those who came to take. Alkebulan is rising. The question is whether you will rise with it. The time for awakening is not tomorrow, it is right now.